Hey everybody, it's Alan Grossheider with Metro Startup Launcher. I'm just playing around with some royalty-free music websites to see if we can find some music for Metro Startup Launcher to liven things up a little bit. These websites are hilarious. There's a whole bunch of just really funny songs, so I'm going to play some of these, and email me if you like any of them. Think we might have a good theme song for Metro Startup Launcher. I don't know about this one. That's enough of that. That one's a little weird. Now that you're warmed up from that fantastic theme music, let's get to it. I mentioned that I have been talking to a lot of entrepreneurs and trying to get opinions on concerns and things people would like to see improved in our startup community. An investor or entrepreneur I'd been talking to a while back had, I thought, a really cool idea, and I gave him my thoughts on what I would do if I was in his shoes. And since that time, he apparently has sold the idea to somebody else and is moving on. But he had some opinions on what he sees in our entrepreneurial community that can be improved, and thought he would write a letter to Metro Startup Launcher to help us share that opinion with the community and see what you all think. So I'm going to read this letter and just throw in my commentary as we go along. And would love to hear from everybody else if you'll email and let us know what you think, or put comments on the blog/podcast post that we put out. So here we go. I'm going to roll through this pretty fast, and then I'll just throw in some commentary. But first, I'm just going to start reading it. He titled it, "The State of Venture Capital in Louisville from a Startup's Point of View." And he starts by saying, "Before offering my viewpoints and experiences on the state of venture capital in Louisville, one has to first recognize two other important elements of the money hunt. First is the established and formal educational and support opportunities, and secondly, the network of professionals that enhance their effectiveness. This is where Louisville shines. Few other cities approaching Louisville's size have programs and commitments like those of GLI's Enterprise Corp., the University of Louisville's Nucleus program, and business school entrepreneurial offerings." So I agree with that. There's definitely, this is Alan's comment now. I agree with that. Certainly our city has a great network of people who are doing their best to create a stronger startup and entrepreneurial community. He continues, "Under the leadership of Lisa Bajornis, GLI's Enterprise Corp creates and connects startups with resources that are valuable and effective. Some complain of the revolving door of talent at Enterprise Corp, but I see it differently. Very smart and driven people are recruited, create opportunities for the community, and as a result are naturally sought by other organizations. Witness the departure of Terry Gill and Amelia Gandara. Just two examples of high-value talent going forward to new challenges after demonstrating stellar performances locally. More than just creating programs of awards and recognition, Enterprise Corp connects, supports, and locally advocates for the startup community." I would agree with that paragraph, and I'll throw in one other, Tendai Charasika, just because I'm friends with Tendai, and I think he's moved on in the way that this author of this letter mentioned, to help run a startup company and successfully raise capital for that startup company and do something to make a difference. I think Lisa being around for a long time and maintaining the continuity of the organization certainly has helped keep things moving along, and there's definitely a great community to help entrepreneurs in our city. And continuing with the letter, the University of Louisville has an internationally recognized program of support for health-related startups, both internationally licensing research as well as having impressive physical support facilities such as the Nucleus Complex. Also, the University of Louisville's Nucleus umbrella includes the Launch It program, of which I am a graduate, that helps startups focus and accelerate the very hard but necessary work of creating a minimum viable product and custom discovery. The business school at University of Louisville, especially the MBA entrepreneurial program, repeatedly wins awards and real money from the efforts of the students, and many go off to start their own business or help larger organizations create opportunities international. Other treasures for the startup community include Startup Weekend, GE First Build, and Makerspaces. In addition, Louisville has a business-savvy mayor that supports the business community and startups in general. An integral part of this network is the dedicated experts, coaches, and investors who give tirelessly and enthusiastically advice and support. People like Greg Langdon, Bob Saunders, and others support and connect startups while never expecting anything in return, other than the satisfaction that they are nurturing and growing a vital startup community. Businesses like Mightily and Execuity help in marketing and strategy, and firms like Frost Brown Todd give advice, expert advice in the spirit of paying it forward. Again, I would agree with most of that. There's a few things I might think twice about. I think some of the organizations that are heavily involved in our startup community are not necessarily doing it with nothing, expecting nothing in return. A lot of people are trying to get business out of it, but certainly the people that he mentions here are tireless in their efforts to help the startup community and have done a lot to help startup companies and really make a huge difference to this community. Now for the ugly side. Formal groups of investors, such as the venture connectors, are very risk averse. In my opinion, despite the best efforts of the board of directors, venture connectors should be named the Chicken Shit Club. I know what you may be thinking, sour grapes from another founder that was not able to get funding locally. Besides, it has been shouted from the rooftops many times, a good idea always gets funded. I'd posit that a good idea always gets funded, but not necessarily funding from Louisville-based venture capitalists. This is my personal opinion based on my experience, so if indeed I am jaded and cynical, then so be it. That is what I have experienced firsthand. I didn't reach this conclusion lightly, but after being asked more than once to pay for an introduction, I'm going to emphasize that, pay for an introduction to a wealthy investor. Also, I attended meetings for more than a year. By the way, get rid of the bad actors. It really discourages startups from having any faith in your organization. I'll agree with most of that again. Venture Connectors, to me, is not a venture. It's not an angel investor group. Maybe it was started with that intention, but in the meetings I've been to, I have not seen a lot of investors there. I have made a lot of great contacts, and I've been involved in the startup community here since about 1993. I'm not sure when Venture Connectors started, but I've not seen people actually raise capital through Venture Connectors. I think people have made good contacts that may have turned into capital, but to me, it doesn't appear to be. It's not a club. It's more of an entrepreneurial organization where people can network, not an angel investor club or a venture capital club. Another thing I'll talk about in this paragraph is the comment about great ideas or good ideas always get funding. I don't buy that. To me, a great idea with a great founder who never gives up always gets funded. There's definitely a caveat to that. It's always up to the founder not giving up and believing in the idea and continuing to pursue investors and pursue all the pieces that it takes to make the company work. Where he says that they get investments from outside capital, outside of Louisville, is absolutely true. I believe that is one of the biggest problems that we have in Louisville right now is great companies don't find capital in Louisville. So you get the great company, the great founder who doesn't give up, That founder keeps looking, keeps asking for investments, and finally finds them. And that investment may be in Boston or Atlanta or Silicon Valley, somewhere outside of Louisville. And guess what? They're gone. They're moved to that city along with all of their employees and all the jobs. And then when that company becomes profitable and sells, or there is some kind of exit, most of the profits go somewhere else. So that's a big problem. And he mentions paying for an introduction to a wealthy investor, and that's just, I think that's wrong. And it does happen. There are people in the city that ask for money to be introduced to investors. And when a startup company already needs money and they feel desperate because they can't find the investors, that's just wrong to make them pay money out of pocket to possibly meet investors, and maybe they don't at all and they're just out the money. It's just, I don't agree with that, doing that at all. Now back onto the letter. He says, venture connectors would be much better served if they would increase the attendance fee to $50 per meeting for guests and $100 for members. That should separate the wheat from the chaff. Allocate those fees after expenses, and award seed money every month, not once a year. That's an estimated $5,000 per month awarded. And I think he got the 50 and the 100 backwards for members maybe, but I'm not sure if that would work. I don't know the finances of venture connectors, but my assumption would be a lot of the fee goes toward just general operation and toward the lunch and facility that gets paid for the Muhammad Ali Center. So I'm not sure how much money is left over, and I'm not sure that would work. I believe that the venture connectors, there was a time I felt like venture connectors, I had a lot of issues with venture connectors, but the more I look into it and the more I'm working on Metro Startup Launcher, the more I think it's a great venue. The people that run it are doing a great job of maintaining a nice monthly meeting that helps entrepreneurs and some investors get excited about our entrepreneur community. And it's just a great place to network. It's probably the best place to network for startup companies. So I'll continue with his letter. Programs like the Vogue Awards are treasures, but honestly, there needs to be more funding available and more frequently. Often the amounts awarded to finalists are the kiss of death. It just keeps them lingering in hopes of more. So kind of agree with that. I think there should be more funding, but it's very difficult for organizations to come up with funding to crank out regular awards or regular investments for early startup companies. This is why I believe the Metro Startup Launcher mentality, or the way that we are setting up to raise capital for startups, is the right way to go. And working with all the existing organizations, venture connectors, Enterprise Corp, Enterprise Angels, everybody else out there who is trying to help startups get going, Metro Startup Launcher wants to be an asset for all of them. This will be a place, this is a website that will encourage people to invest in startups and make it easier to invest in startups through more of a crowdfunding process. Back to the letter. Other cities have robust angel investment and venture capital communities. Louisville does not. I know many wealthy people in Louisville. Some are friends, and they seem not to be interested in participating locally as much as they do in other areas of the country. This needs to change. Imagine the impact people like Schneider would have, and I'm sure he's talking about Papa John, or for that part, where is that mass transfer of wealth created from the Humana acquisition going? And I just saw that the Humana acquisition isn't going to go through. But out of town as quickly as those restricted shares are cashed out. It's not their fault. They are not inherently stingy. It is that they have no encouragement or outlet to do so. One exception is the Jones family, who are famously generous. I agree with all of that. I think that other communities have robust angel investment and venture capital communities, and Louisville does not. I don't think that is I think that's a function of the size of the city and the fact that we're not Silicon Valley. We don't have lots and lots of huge startups that have become billion-dollar companies spinning off people who are interested in spending a lot of time working on angel investing. We've got nice groups of people who have very good intentions, enterprise angels, for example, that do look at a lot of deals, but they don't invest in a lot of deals because who's got the money to just keep throwing money at deals that don't necessarily come through, or they may take a long time to come through. So the number of deals that they invest in is pretty small, and usually they're looking for home runs. They're looking for easy investments that have the right people in them, and that's completely understandable. Nobody wants to lose money on an investment. Again, this is where I see Metro Startup Launcher being something that really makes a difference in the community, because our whole goal is just to get more people investing in startups. If you have thousands of people investing small amounts in startups so that the risk is spread and those people don't have a lot of risk to invest in any one particular startup, they're not investing $50,000 in one startup, it makes it so much easier for a lot of startups to get started. And it's just a matter of getting that ball rolling and creating an easy process for that to happen. Back to the letter. From my perspective, if you're a healthcare or in some specific instances a technology company, you have a chance of getting funding in Louisville. There's a big difference between an investor in the traditional sense and venture capitalists and an angel investor. They just don't exist here. My advice for startups: don't count on being funded locally, but do take advantage of all the world-class resources available to you. Your reputation is important, so be coachable and learn as much as you can, but be prepared to conduct the money hunt out of town. So that's the end of his letter, and that's kind of certainly jaded. He said it himself in the letter that maybe he has a little bit of a jaded perspective, but I felt that way too, and I think a lot of other people have felt that way about Louisville. If you want to raise capital, you can spin your wheels trying to raise capital in Louisville and probably not get anywhere. Maybe you find a handful of investors that get the ball rolling, and then you start looking somewhere else, and that's when you raise the capital you need to start your company. And I've said it before in a previous podcast, this is the problem. When this happens, if it's a really good concept and a really great company and a really great leader of that company, they do raise the capital, but they raise it somewhere else. When that company ends up getting moved out of Louisville, and so does the entrepreneur, and so does the profit when that company has an exit. And a lot of times that person does not come back to Louisville and settle in again and start investing in startups. They end up staying somewhere else. You know, our city's got it's a great city with great restaurants and great parks and great atmosphere, great things to do. People love it when they get here. Entrepreneurs don't love it when they get here because they can't raise capital. Metro Startup Launcher can change this, and this is not anything magic. We're not doing anything crazy. It's just cheerleading. We are another cheerleader that is working toward getting people investing in startups, helping people become aware that there are startups in this community. There are 1.3 million people in the Louisville area, and according to statistics from the Federal Reserve Board, there should be 56,000 accredited households in Louisville. That's a boatload of potential investors. These are people that don't want to go to a monthly meeting at the Louisville Boat Club to be a part of Enterprise Angels. These are people that don't want to go to a monthly meeting at Venture Connectors. And it's not because it's just because that's not something that they are interested in. They have their jobs and they're doing their thing, but I can tell you from experience, from raising capital for my own companies, people like to invest in a cool idea as long as you make it easy for them. This is what Metro Startup Launcher is doing. We're going to make it easy for them, and we need help from everybody. That's it for today. If you haven't signed up yet for the Metro Startup Launcher newsletter, just go to metrostartuplauncher.com, sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get notifications whenever we put out a podcast or a blog or any other training videos, whatever we're putting out. You can also follow us on YouTube. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can subscribe on iTunes. You can subscribe on Stitcher, just about anywhere you want. Help us get the word out. Tell other people to sign up. For now, this is Alan Grossheider with Metro Startup Launcher, and I will talk to you next time.